Hello, YouTube land. This is Brenton Son coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky, the Bluegrass State. We have Brendan from Kentucky coming back. We had him on the last show talking about not believing in Bigfoot, and he was taking us through all these things that were happening, from his wife calling him while he was at work, and there was a really tall black figure on their porch kind of thing, and to later seeing this black figure by the barn or his garage, and it was really tall, kind of slumped over, kind of looking, but his arms were long. It just stuff wasn't adding up. He goes out and he fires a couple shots after it runs so fast. It was running twice as fast as he could up this hill through thick brush, and it busted through into the trees, and there was a few things that were just like, wow, how could this thing run so fast, and all these little things adding up, and it comes to this culminating in one night they were watching a movie. His wife and his kid fell asleep, and he was watching another movie, and he heard some heavy footsteps again come up onto the porch and said thud, thud, thud. And he knew it stopped right by the window where the lights are on inside. You can look in the house, but when you're inside the house, you can't see out. But he knew it was standing right there. He leans up, and this thing growls and rattles. The type of ceiling he had the metal kind of coating on it, or it was finished in a tin-like finish, and it rattled that tin. It rattled the wine rack and rattled him. And he grabs his wife and he grabs his child, and he's dragging them up the stairs. And his wife wakes up and he says, "Move, get up these stairs." And she didn't even question him. She knew that there was something horribly wrong, and she obeyed at that time and went up the stairs. And so these things were escalating, and at this point he was getting to a point where he was not believing in Bigfoot at first, but there was something horribly wrong, something way different. This could no longer be explained by a bear or a raccoon or anything like that. So we have Brendan coming back because he has one more piece of this to tell. And then he ends up moving from this house, and then these encounters get to a higher level because he didn't move very far. He only moved a few miles down the road, because all this property in this area his family owned. But anyway, we're going to go let him tell this story. I just want you all to make sure that you watched the first episode to kind of get a feel how someone can go from not believing in this stuff, it just can't be real, it's not around here, to coming to a conclusion in your mind that we've got Bigfoot at our home. So Brendan, get us up to speed on whatever you think that I might have left out that you feel like needs to be put in, and take us to the owl calls and the tactical calls that seem to be coming from the ridges, and then we'll go into the hunting encounter where you see these things straight on to where it's very, very positive identification of what you were dealing with. I'll give you the floor.
Okay, we just we ran out of time last night, but once we kind of realized, like you said, this just was getting weird and undeniable and just like unhumanish, but I started leaving the window open at night, something that I didn't do before, and I was letting the breeze come in, but this window where my bed was, this window was literally no further than 12 inches above my head. So anything that rung out that night, I heard great, and so a lot of times I'd lay there with volume down real low, watching TV or something, and we started hearing them come in, you know, and at times, you know, if we would have had our window open previous, we probably would have heard it, but we would hear, it's freaking, like I explained to you earlier, right across the road from our house was thick woods, a mountain. Went straight up. This mountain probably went up a good 3/4 of a mile. And it was privately owned. It wasn't owned by me, but it was owned by my neighbor. No one was allowed to access it. No one was allowed to hunt it but him. And he owned all the way to the top of the mountain. But in this whole side of the mountain, nobody lived on. And this, like I said last night, Long Hollow goes on 4 miles. But there was 2 ridges that come down like an upside down V on this mountain, and there was a stream that comes down the center, so it all sloped in. But we started hearing, we would notice on each one of these, because I had walked it, and I eventually went and tried to see where they was at. But up on these ridges where we was hearing these noises come from, you had a good visual advantage up the holler on one side, and then on the other ridge had a good visual advantage up the holler going the other direction. Well, we would hear, it was like they would get to these positions, one on one ridge and one on the other, and they would give out a call or a knock. But we heard them, it would be one single knock, pow, from one ridge. Then on the other ridge, a single knock reply, pow. But it was always usually just one sequence, you know what I mean? But they would switch it up. Some nights, and you know, they would make an owl call, and it would come from the exact, these sounds would come from pretty much the exact same spot every time we would observe them. And we probably listened to this probably close to half a dozen times, probably about 6 times. And we heard them call with an owl call. But, you know, people's got to understand that the owl call is not dead on an owl. There was always something, you know, different about it. It just wasn't right. You know, it didn't sound exactly like an owl. We heard them let out like a crow call. Very, very few. Or that's what we thought it might have been, because once again, it kind of sounded different, a lot deeper than a crow, a lot just different. But we heard whistles. We heard whistles on several occasions. We would get a whistle. It was always like a single tone whistle, but there would always be one come from one ridge and one come from the other. And we got to noticing that a lot of the times after this would happen, sometimes we'd get a knock on the window, or a thump, or just, you know, something weird. Just so to me, that kind of seemed like they was getting to an advantage point, making sure the coast was clear, and then they would proceed from there. Now, if one would stay back or what, I don't know. Now, me and my wife also one night was laying there with the window open, and we got the call, something let out a scream, and it had to have been right there on that hillside. I mean, it's hard to judge the distance, but it was right there close on that hillside across from our road. But it let out a scream, and it was just, it's undescribable. It's one of them screams you'd have to hear, but it almost sounded like a woman mixed with just long, loud, different tones, and that's what was so weird. It went through so many different tones with it, and it was my wife just jumped up and looked at me, and because we was laying there with everything off, trying to go to sleep. Me and her was the only ones that was up. And she looked at me, and did you hear that? And I said, yeah. And it's, we kind of had a little discussion about what it could be, and both kind of agreed that there really, nothing else there could be. It was just it was so loud. Now we have had sightings of black panthers around here, black cats, like a mountain lion type. There's been reporting of mountain lion, the tan colored ones and the black. I've seen personally 2 of the black panther, or whatever you want to call them, and I've heard them scream. And yeah, they'll give you a bone chilling. They're a woman. They sound like a woman dying, but I've heard that many times, because like I told you in the interview, that I used to live in Florida, and we lived right up to a marsh when I was a young kid, and I heard that scream a lot when I lived there in the nights. So I was familiar with a bobcat and the black panther, and it was neither one of them. So, yeah, things like that going on. And I even come to, when I was mowing the yard one spring, Brenton, I come through and found a footprint in the yard. Now, that's the only footprint I had ever found there, but we had a lot of rain, and a lot of rain, and for a couple weeks, and it dried up for a couple days, and my yard was real nasty, or getting high, so I went through to mow it, and I come through a spot, and there was a big indention into the ground. Well, I had been talking to my dad about this stuff, and he wasn't having none of it really. Well, I had got him and shown him the footprint, and he was so amazed by it. We jumped in the truck and went to the nearest lumber yard and bought a thing of plaster, and we plastered the footprint. So he was intrigued there. You know what I mean? He didn't know what to say there.
Do you all still
cast the footprint?
Do you still have that?
It's somewhere around here. During the move. We'll have to dig for it. I looked for it here a couple of weeks ago, and I couldn't find it. But we've got it put up somewhere. I've got it wrapped up in a grocery sack, but I'll have to find it. If I find it, I'll send you a picture of it. But I have sent you, I don't know if you got them, but I sent you some pictures of some prints I've found around my house here in the email.
Okay.
But the prints that I found, they wasn't really there was one that was really castable, or in good castable material. I found some that was in mud, but it really wasn't detailed enough to cast, and so I just figured a picture is easier to show. But that really kind of sums up, just besides a little, like I mentioned last night, we had little things go on, like the tapping, or a thump on the window, or a thump on the wall, things like that. And I was mowing one day, and like I told you, it sounded like rocks was bouncing off the house at times. Well, I was mowing one day, and I come through and had to stop and pick up several good rocks, like the size of 2 of my fists put together, or the size of my fist, or it would have messed up my lawnmower if I'd hit it. So, and I'd ask the kids, y'all stacking rocks up over here by the house? And no, we didn't do it. So that was kind of, they wasn't stacked, but they just laid out, like maybe if they would have been thrown against the house, they'd have bounced onto the ground. I just asked them if they had brought rocks over, and they said that they hadn't done it. So that was, it was just something I just kept in mind, a little note. But yeah, nothing really, besides things like that. But would you like me to move on into my hunting encounter?
Yeah, let's go to the hunting, and I really think that's an incredible experience that you had. And
unless you have any questions there.
Yeah, go ahead and tell that.
Okay. It was just becoming to bow season, and I had went and bought me a new bow, a new Matthews bow, and I bought some hunting equipment. I bought me some new antler calls, and a new grunt wheeze call. Okay, it was a grunt call, but also on the top it has like a little thing, and you can blow it. You know, they make a, something like that. So I figured nothing like that. It was a brand new product, had been tried out, so I wanted to really try it out, all of it. So I take off to go to a tree stand that a neighbor had moved and left behind. So I was going to go hunt it. I figured nobody had hunted it in a long time, because I hadn't. I just wanted to hunt it. Nobody had been in there. And so I go back to this tree stand, and it isn't a quarter mile or a little more back. We got a foiler trail right to it from where I entered the woods. And so I was walking down this foiler trail. When I got closer to the tree stand and starting to get up in it, I was noticing that I was hearing at the time, I thought it was somebody working on something with a hammer or knocking. It sounded like something being beat on wood.
Right.
Is what it was. And I was thinking, because I had walked all through here, just taking walks or looking for hunting finds in the years past and the months past in the past, and there's nothing back there. Like I said, 200 yards or 100 yards or a little more from my tree stand is National Forest boundary, so there's nothing allowed to be there. Well, I got to thinking, well, there's maybe somebody's building a tree stand up in there, a homemade tree stand or something. That's kind of odd. But I just wrote it off. And it sounded, and it wasn't real far. It only sounded, no more than 300 or 400 yards, and it would have been, I guess, off to my east. But I crawled on up into the tree stand and just got to think, didn't think nothing else, thought it, like I said. Well, I was kind of a bummer. Somebody's in the woods making noise, but I thought, well, I'm going to go ahead and hunt anyways. Well, I got all my stuff out and got ready, and I always let the woods calm down for about a half hour or so. So I was sitting around, and this knocking it would go on for a little bit and stop for a minute or so, and then it'd go on a little more and stop and go on. And I just, it was really puzzling me to what it was, but I just continued. So about a half hour, I broke out my antlers and started rattling, and it was mid-October, right in the peak of the rut, so I was hoping to call a good one in, rattled real good, and waited a minute, hit a grunt call or two, and I let out this new snort wheeze call, what I done for you earlier. And when I did this, I sat back and just was going to wait for something to come on in, sit back and be quiet. Well, when I done this, the knocking stopped, and I didn't hear it no more. Well, after, I guess, about 10 minutes or so, I hear, or maybe not even that, I hear footsteps coming through the leaves, through the woods. Okay. Well, when I hear this coming, I'm like, and I'm hearing a branch break, here and there, like either it's stepping on something. Well, I'm hearing these branches break. Deer have small feet. They're made to be quiet. They're made to be stealthy. So when they're stepping, if they feel a branch that, they're made to sit down between branches. Usually if they step on a twig, it's not a loud snap. You know what I mean? So I was hearing pretty good snaps with these footfall, and I was like, well, maybe it's a buck and it's tearing up some, some brush, and he's going to come on in here. I got a little excited. Well, the footsteps got closer and closer, and I got to realizing these footsteps they're bipedal. This really didn't sound like no deer coming in. This is the bipedal footsteps, but at times it kind of did sound quadrupedal, and I was getting confused here. So I was like, well, maybe this is a hunter coming up on me. He's heard me rattle, and they was over there building that tree stand. Now they're going to come over here and thinking they're going to sneak up or on a deer or either run me out of here, or it's a forest ranger, Well, I'm following the sound. It comes down the hill across from me, and I'm trying my hardest to get a visual on this, and I can't. But whatever this is using, it's using the woods to its advantage. It come down part of the hill that it knew I'd have a hard time spotting it because it was a little thicker. Okay, well, it worked down the hill and into the creek, and I think it come up the creek because I didn't hear it for a few minutes, for a few seconds, and then when I do hear it again, it's on my side of the creek coming up the hill, but it's further down the creek than what it was, a lot further out in front of me. Okay? But like at first, when it come down the hill, it almost come down behind me, but it worked the creek up in front of me, and I heard it come out of the creek and come up the hill. Well, there was a logging road that comes down the hill, so it had to cross that logging road, and there was a bank. When it come up that bank, this is the first time I've seen it when it crested the bank. But when it come up, it was already fixed on me. It already had it was already looking at me. When it come right up at that bank, like it knew exactly where to look. Well, this thing was it was jet black. Completely jet black, and we have bear around here, and like I said, I spotted 2 black panther. At first, I was like, that might be, hey, look, a bear. And then I was like, well, black panthers? And then what? Because this figure had no ears, okay? A bear or, when I've spotted them around here, a bear or a black panther, I have no problem seeing the ears, even if they lay them back, or, but this thing was no further than 60, 65 yards, right in there, 60, 70 yards away from me. And I was getting a very good visual of it. But not close enough to where I could just see great details and colors of its eye. But this thing, it was a prominent round head, come right down to prominent shoulders, and when it come up that bank, it was hunched down like it was on 4 feet, like it was crawling at one moment, but when I seen it, it was coming off, it was hunched down like it might have been on 4 feet, but it was on 2, and it took 2 steps up the bank, and just stopped, and then straightened up, and looked at me, and I could see from about the waist, or just a little further around the waist, up, and, but yeah, this thing had no ears. I could see features into the face. Around in the face area, there was no hair. The color to it.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it had no hair on it, and the color to it was a grayish tint. It was, like I explained to you, it's kind of like a charcoalish gray, but it had a black fur, but there was a grayish in the face. You know what I mean? It's hard to explain the color. Like
yeah, well,
I told you,
that's a very common. That's a common description. The black fur, and it's got a grayish, almost aboriginal.
Yeah, like I said, almost
skin
for
tone.
aboriginal. Yeah, how they get. Yeah.
Okay. So you're in your tree stand. You see this thing. It comes up over the hill. It spots you immediately. It seems to have known where you were, and it seems to also kind of go quadruped and bipedal, and it's confused you a little bit. So what happens from there as you're in your tree stand?
Yeah. Well, we stared at each other here for about I guess about 7 to 9 seconds right in there, and I'm literally just running things through my head, you know, what in the world, and finally I'm like, I'm like, I can't believe it, and I actually said a word that I was like, what the, you know, like that, because I realized what I was looking at, and I was creeped out, and as soon as I said that, it darted, it darted right back the way it comes. Now, it run off. It seemed like it come up on 2 feet. When it run off, it seemed like it took 2 good steps. Like I said, it tried to keep itself as good obscure, but it seemed like it took 2 steps on 2 feet, and then it kind of dropped down to all 4. But this thing backtracked the way it come in. But this is what I always got, you know, people want to say, well, you know, you saw a bear. You know, yeah, at first when I seen it, that's what reasonable explanation, everybody tries to put it off or something, but, you know, when an animal sees you like that, it's gone. It's going to get as far away from you as it can. It ain't going to look back. But this thing backtracked, and where it come down the hill adjacent to me, instead of going away from me, I had my tree stand backed up to a thick thicket, and I had my back to it. Well, this thing come up the thicket behind me, and I could hear it, like I said, and I listened to it come all the way up the hill. And this thing got anywhere from about really no further than about 20 yards. It got to where I was thinking, if it takes another step, I'm going to see this thing. You know, I couldn't see it after it ran off. And it got down into the creek. I could not see it no more. But it got so close, I thought if it takes another step or 2, you know, I'm going to be able to see it. And mind you, all I had was my bow. I had no firearm, no other weapon. I might have had a knife, but
so as you're sitting in your tree stand, it went around the thicket and came up behind you.
So, it backtracked. Yeah,
okay,
it backtracked the way it come.
So
yeah, and then it circled me. Yeah, come right up behind me.
So you were looking around the tree that you're in to try to look behind you to see if you could see it?
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, the way I was sitting, it come up to me about my 5 o'clock position, I guess. At times it was at my 6, but my 5. It come right up about, you know, directly behind me. But when, like I said, when it started, like I said, when I thought I was about to see it, it stopped.
Right.
And then it started shuffling around, and it worked its way around to about my 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock position. I don't know if it was trying to get a better look at me, or because, which that could be the case, because what happened, you know, what happened after that. But yeah, it was working its way around the tree, but I could not see it. Now, to mind you, this was in the evening. All this was happening about an hour before dark. By the time it got up on me and everything, so there was still great light. But by the time it circled behind me and got up into that thicket, this little encounter, it all took a good half hour or more, I'm guessing, or around in there. But time. I was scared. I gotta tell you, because especially it was a good adrenaline boost when I seen it, but when it come around behind me, I really started getting tore up pretty good, because I'm wondering, why is this thing coming back? Why?
Yeah.
And it was working around a little bit, but it was in the thicket forever, and it started getting darker and darker and darker, and eventually it would shuffle around. You could hear it moving a little bit, and then it'd stop, and it'd shuffle around. It really wasn't getting closer, but it was moving around. I guess if it, like I said, maybe a better view. Or finally, I was like, well, I got to get out of here. It's going to get dark on me, and I didn't have a light, and so I decided it was time to just pack up, and I'm going to have to try to get out of here. I was really wanting to wait it out until it left, but I kind of didn't want to be stuck in the dark where I could not see. My thought is maybe if it come after me, I was keeping my bow nocked with an arrow. I was keeping my release set and ready. That way, if it did try to rush me, I would get a draw and shot off by the time it got to me. That was my whole ideal. So I started packing my stuff up. I had everything out, and I started putting it into my backpack. I always take a backpack. Well, I started packing all my stuff, my calls, and I think I had a rangefinder and whatnot. I started putting it all into the backpack, and when I started making all this movement, I guess I got a vocal. This thing hit. Like I said, it's hard to describe, but it was almost like a hiss, like a cat would do, but it was so much more intense. And like I told you, it was almost like you could just see the leaves just like vibrate with it. But it was just intense. I mean, 20 yards away.
You said it was almost like a. You said it was almost like a hiss, a gurgle, and a growl.
Yeah, it had mixtures of like a gurgle with it, or like a growl, or maybe it was trying to growl, but it was, I don't know. It's hard to explain. It really is. Or maybe where it was trying to hit so hard it was cutting out in its throat, or I don't know. But it was really, really intense, really loud, and that really got me. That really got me pretty wound up. But as soon as it ended, but this thing drawled out. This hiss drawled out for it seemed like a good half a minute or more, and it just drawled out. And as soon as it stopped, this thicket went nuts. I mean, this thing, like it had a fit. Trees snapping. I could see the tops of trees just thrashing. I could hear like movement, just tearing it up, like it just had a fit. And so that really, as soon as everything stopped, I was really creeped.
So do you think this thing might have been mad because you were hunting in its hunting area?
Yeah. I think when I made these calls, it either thought, well, hey, I'm going to go observe these deer, or I'm going to go see what's, like I said, I went in there thinking, these calls, nobody's really ever been in there doing these snort weeds, is what I was thinking. You know what I mean? This this call just had come out that year, and I really wanted it, so I went and bought it, and I wanted to try it. You know what I mean? I figured it was a new trick nobody had ever tried.
Right. Well, let's just go from this point over to the only reason I'm asking that it seems like it made an aggressive, angry growl, and it's seeing you at hunting. I really believe that it would recognize you were deer hunting because they know what deer hunters are. So let's move forward to the friend of yours who had been deer hunting, and these issues that came up when they shot deer and the deer come up missing. Can you take us through that?
Yeah, now it did vocal at me twice. I got down, as soon as I got out of the tree stand, it made a whoop. It went whoop. And I got on out, and when I got to the road out of the woods, I heard another whoop from about in the same general area that it was. It sounded a little bit closer. But yes, my father, our next door neighbor, from where I grew up, he had moved out, and like I said, I was hunting in his tree stand that he had left. He had told us that we could have it. Me and him and my dad was really close. We hunted together and all kinds of stuff. But when he moved out, my father ended up buying the property. And like I said, he had a nice shower my dad wanted, and so my dad sent me to get this shower. And my dad had told him what had happened to me, so he asked me some questions. Well, he had told me that they had heard some vocals because this tree stand is a straight shot from where they live. Their front door, just 400 or 500 yards from right at his front door. He said he had heard vocals, screams, he howls and stuff that they did not know what it was. You know what I mean? But he had told me some stories about he had a problem that he would shoot a deer. He would shoot a deer, and he would either watch it run and lay down and die, or he would go and find it. But he would always go back and get his four-wheeler and try to get his four-wheeler as close to the deer as he possibly could, as least work as he could, and, to get the deer and haul it out. Well, he would go back to get his four-wheeler and come back, and his deer had been gone. And he had looked around for drag marks, no drag marks, just simply there'd be a big pool of blood where his deer bled out and the deer be gone. And look around for it, thinking it might have got up and run back off, couldn't find blood, couldn't find track, never found the deer. He claimed he had this happen to him at least, I think, 2 times, and a guy that would come out here and hunt had shot a deer and done the exact same thing, found it and went back out to get help, and went back and it was gone. Something took it. But, all that happened right here in this general area. Yeah.
So that's kind of why I was thinking that maybe when you're deer hunting in the stand that they're saying, leave my deer alone. You're messing with my refrigerator.
Yeah, it almost, it seemed like, it wanted me out. Yeah, I mean, if it wanted to get me, it would have no problem, I don't think. But, it didn't, it didn't probably know that. But yeah, it showed an expression that it was just frustrated to me. Yeah. It wanted me out.
Sometimes we think about the wildlife management people. They issue deer tags and they're managing the wildlife. But I kind of sometimes wonder how much the Sasquatch or the Bigfoot, they're also managing their wildlife. They move around and they hunt. They don't just hunt one area dry. You know what I'm saying? So they might hunt an area down until the doe and the buck are at a certain population. They might migrate around to the other ridge and hunt to allow the population to be sustained. I mean, that's just a guess, but when humans come in, it almost seems like they were concerned about you hunting the deer. But that's very interesting.
I agree. Yeah.
So from here, let's go to the Um, let's go to either the rock throwing incident and how that progresses, or the roof, them getting on the roof. So however you think that would be best to tie that in, start with either one you want.
Okay. Yeah. I'll go ahead and start. But yeah, at times we would be at here, and like I told you, I started getting more interested into it and looking into, especially after I had my fighting, I started looking into these things, trying to take in as many stories as I could find, anything.
Right.
Well, of course, I got out here in the evenings, and I would whoop, and I'd cut me some good branches that would let out a good knock, and I'd knock, and I would try to get them to come in and interact a little bit and stuff. But, you know, I never, at time to time, I'd get a knock back, but I'd never really get no vocals or anything like that. But at times we would, I'm going to tell people out there, you know, yeah, if you want to try this, that's cool. But it's at your own risk. But I'm telling you, sometimes you can call them right into you, because I know this is what's happened. I've let these things out, and I know and it's brought them in. But we would be sitting here, you know, if they're around you, but we would be sitting here, and we would hear a thump around on the back part of our house, and it's on the roof. But after you'd hear that thump, it sounded like footsteps, or, you know, coming right across the roof. And they was distinct enough and cracking in the roof, and what it sounded like more than often was weight-bearing load. You know, you get weight on wood, and it's going to crack and pop, and, you know what I mean, you know.
Hold on, let me say something right quick. You and your family are in the roofing business,
Yes,
so
sir.
you know a lot about roofs. So when you say something about something heavy on a roof, and there being something about weight bearing issues, because we
built this.
You have your rafters, you have your joists, you have your cross ties, your rat runs, and all that kind of stuff that is all pieced together to bear the load. You know what I'm saying?
Now the roof we're talking about is a flat roof. Now we built, like I said, this is addition onto, we built it. This part that I'm talking about that I hear them on is a flat rubber roof.
Oh, wow.
We built the addition, we framed it, we poured the footers, we built it, roofed it, we done it the whole 9 yards.
Okay.
And yeah, we've got a big 2x12 runs a beam, a 60-foot 2x12 going straight through the house. I mean, but yeah, it's built good for weight bearing because of snow. We didn't get any bad snows. We don't, you know, and but you can just, it's weight. Yeah, it's a weight bearing load walking across this roof. Right. It's a flat roof.
And
it's
anywhere,
so distinctive.
Anywhere in the north, or even down in Kentucky, when you build a roof, that you build it with at least a pitch to dispense the snow, or you build it in a way that it's going to bear the load, the snow load during the winter. So these things are coming up, jumping on this flat roof. Are they getting onto the other part of the roof and then getting up by the chimney and things like that?
Okay, yeah, the flat roof runs all along. What it is, it's a single wide trailer with an addition built onto the back. It comes all the way down the trailer. It's pretty much the same width as the trailer. We built the addition, same width of the trailer, same length of the trailer. Okay. You know.
All right.
And then on the front, we have a porch, and it also, a good porch, it's about 15 foot out by about 30 foot, and we have a flat rubber roof over it. Now, they're not completely flat. They're like at a 1 degree pitch. You know, they got a little bit of a tilt to them, you know, like at a 1 degree. But But, yeah, them are really the only two spots that we hear them, because I think they're smart enough. We have metal on the trailer park. We have a green metal. And it gets a film on it, and if you step on it, it leaves a footprint. And I think and we never hear them on the metal, and I think they're smart enough to know that the metal makes a lot more noise, and that they might leave a possible footprint. Because trust me, I've climbed up there, and I have inspected it very thoroughly, trying to find footprints, because in this metal, it gets a little dusty film, and if you put your hand on it, it's probably going to leave dermal marks and everything. Right. Because I can place my hand on it and see dermal marks and just great features. So I've been looking. I found a couple of spots that looks like hair's been swapped. Okay. But I've never, and maybe a finger or two swiped, but yeah. And I found a couple of swiped spots, but it's not definitive.
So where is it that you have the chimney?
Okay, the chimney is in the living room part, the main addition. Okay, it's into the addition where this flat roof is. We'll hear them come up to the back of the house. You can hear them it's a loud first boom, like they're jumping or something, you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's a loud boom, and then you can hear the footsteps come from the back of the house. You can follow them straight up like the hallway and around to the chimney. And every time we hear this, I can sit in this living room for months every night and never hear a creak, not one time. Right. In the ceiling. It can be hot outside, there can be snow, you never hear a creak. Yeah. But I can follow this all the way to the chimney. Now, like I said, I've been up there several times, and I want to know why they're going to the chimney. Because, like I said, I can follow it right to it, and I've also got smells come out of the chimney. But when I was up there, I could hear the TV, and my wife was in the living room. I was trying to imitate the sound that we was hearing, and she said I was nowhere close to it. She could hear me up there, but it was soft sounds and not the loud creaking, and nowhere as loud. But I could hear her voice excellent. If I put my ear up to the chimney, I could hear her talking perfect. I could hear the TV perfect. I could hear everything that was going on. But if I stepped away from the chimney, it was really muffled and you could hardly hear it. So I think that's what they was doing. I think they was coming to the chimney and maybe getting a good listen as of the entertainment. Right. Because the way we've got everything set up, there's really no windows. There's only about 2 windows they could peer in. And like I said, I got 2 German Shepherds. They're not going to let them just stand there and peer in a window. Right. And like I was telling you, I think they distract. Because I've heard noises and stuff. They'll distract these dogs, and one of them will come around and jump on the roof. And that's the way it seems to me.
But another piece of evidence is when this happens, when they go over to that chimney, you will go over by the fireplace and you'll smell this smell. Can you kind of describe that?
Yeah, this happens several times. Now, sometimes we'd hear the creaking and stuff, and we would ignore it and just go on. Sometimes, but the more it happened, we'd get a little more creeped out by it. But there was a few times that we would get a bad smell and a horrible smell. Well, it would just come and go, and we just could not figure it out. Well, one night I was sitting, I've got a recliner that sits oblong to, away from the fireplace, and on the end closest to it, it's really close. I felt a draft come out of the chimney. And I just heard these creaks on the ceiling, and I felt that draft, and all of a sudden, I got the worst smell in the world, and I stood up, and I was like, what in the world? Well, okay, I got to figuring out what this was. So the next time I got this smell, I walked over to this chimney, and I stuck my nose up in that chimney and smelled, and I just gagged. the wind was backdrafting, and I don't know if it was emitting the smell or if the wind was just backdrafting and pulling the smell with it. But it smelled like a dog, just the nastiest wet dog mixed with like a armpit or a skunkish smell, and it smelled like that thing had just rolled in feces, just had a good day in feces or something,
The typical Bigfoot smell.
A rank smell, huh?
Yeah, I mean, when people try to describe the Bigfoot smell, it's funny because they're only trying to put together the smells that they know, and it's like that smelled like a really bad armpit or so it's quite funny, but it's a horrible smell, and the creaking and the smells and stuff coming at the same time, that's just too much evidence. I think that they were going to the chimney and listening, and every once in a while the chimney pulling air would pull the smell of them into your house. So yeah, that's a very common thing of them getting on the roof, and for whatever reasons, in total, who knows? But I think your theory of them listening was a really good one, because they like to watch through the windows, and it seems like they like to listen also. And so
yeah, and there's no windows in the addition either.
Right.
It's concrete poured footer all the way to the ceiling. So
yeah. So from here, let's you were talking about you and your friend with the pellet guns and stuff, and then having this figure run, and then the trees again. This was before you even believed in a Bigfoot situation. So,
when I was a kid, that was just, that was one thing that I look back, and me and a buddy, and I forgot about it for years, but me and a buddy had the same farm that I'm living on now. We was probably, we was younger, 12, 13, right in there, and we had a fascination with pellet guns. Well, we got together one weekend and got our pellet guns. He'd come over to my house, and we took off to the back of the property and started going to the woods and over the ridge. Well, there was a snow on. There was probably about 3 or 4 inches or so. Well, when we come into the woods, we entered the timber and went about 30 yards or so, and just a flash right across in front of us. It was a black flash, but this figure it moved quick. It was probably about 50 yards in front of us. It moved quick, but we only got it for about 2, 3 seconds. And it was a tall, dark figure. And I looked at my buddy and I said, "Did you see that?" And his eyes was, you could just tell he seen it. He said, "Yeah, I seen it." And I said, "Well, what?" I said, "Well, I wonder what that was." And he was like, "I don't know, man." And he said, well, let's go back. Or he said, "Let's go back," And I said, "No, let's go on down here. I want to see, what this thing was." And he was a little more scared type than I was. And well, I just continued on down the ridge a little bit, because it was in the snow. We could see the track line in the distance, and I wanted to walk up on this track line where it run off. Well, I was walking down through there, and he was slowly just he was keeping a distance behind me, coming behind me, and I got about halfway to the track line, and all of a sudden this tree starts just shaking. And it was probably, like I said, at the bottom, it probably had to be about 1 foot in diameter, because it was a good 40, 50-foot tree, 40 foot or so. And this tree was just a swaying. And he finally walked up to me, and I said, and the more it swayed, it'd get a little more violent. And I said, do you see that tree? And he's like, "Yeah." And we was like, "Well, was it the wind?" But none of the other trees are moving. Every other tree was just sitting still. On the other side of the ridge, just a minute or so after that, another tree just stopped. But we could not see what was causing the tree to shake at all. It was all out of sight of the brush. But on the other side of the ridge, another tree started shaking in the same fashion. So my buddy said, I've had, this is it, I'm going home. Well, I'm getting back to the house. So he turned around and went on. So I followed out. I took off after him. We got on back to the house, run up to the house, and my mother was the only one that was home. And we run in here, and hey, we just seen this. And, we told her the whole deal. And she was, it had to been a bear, and we was, does bears shake trees like that? And I don't know, and she just would just, there's no telling. She could see that we was distraught by it, and she just told us, she said, she just kept, avoiding it. And she just told us, if y'all don't feel comfortable, just stay in the house or play here in the yard around close to the house. And that was it. Well, when my dad got home, I went through the same thing with him, and he went through the same thing with me. It must have been a bear. Well, does bears shake trees? Well, the wind was probably blowing the trees, and yeah.
Do you think that the shaking, where you all were looking in the brush for the tree to be shaken, do you think maybe it was being shaken from up in the tree?
To us, the trees that was being shook was pines. They was not young, but they was decent sized pines. So the tops of them, it was a straight trunk up to a top. A bushy top. So to us, we would have seen something come up or down the tree. We didn't see anything in the tree. To us, it seemed like something was shaking it from the bottom. That's what we thought. Something was down at the bottom, just shaking the trunk. Okay. Now we don't know. We did not see nothing shake the tree, but it was a little too violent to be wind, especially with no trees around it shaking along with it.
Was there enough cover for something to be down there shaking the tree where you couldn't see it? Okay, well,
yeah,
that would just
I know the plant name. I'm trying to think of it, but there's a lot. They're almost like a viney plant, but they get a bunch of big green leaves on them, and they keep the leaves all year round.
Is it hydrilla?
I'm sorry.
Is it like a hydrilla or something like that? Or?
I guess they have like a big oval looking leaf, but they stay green all year round. They get pretty tall. It gets up to 6 foot tall around in here in wet, damp places. These trees, it had a bunch of that green. It stayed green all year round. They had a bunch of this cover. It was real thick where it took to. Yeah, it took off into a bunch of thick, nasty cover. Yeah.
Right.
We could not see. Yeah, it was obscured.
Yeah. Well, they can darn sure shake trees that big. I can tell you that. I've heard of them even grabbing them and snapping them that were 8 inches or so, or 10, or.
Yeah, and that comes along with the other encounter. Like I told you, I know they can throw a rock over 100 yards.
Oh yeah, that's very interesting. Tell us about the tractor thing, because my goodness, dude.
Yeah, but also leading up to the chimney one night. Yeah, I smelt the smell, and I told you I started screaming at it to go away.
Yeah.
It started smacking on the roof or stomping, remember?
Yeah.
I told you about that. Yeah, it started smacking or stomping on the roof. Every time I would scream for it to get out of here, it would either smack or stomp on the roof real hard. And it would smack or stomp hard enough. I got some pictures on the wall right below this, and it sounded like it was jarring them, It was a thud. And I'm sitting where I was standing that night. There was a step, and I was no further than 8 foot from where it was smacking right by my chimney. because I walked up and smelled it. I got that smell, and I was like, you know what, I'm getting tired of this. And this was the last time I've ever heard anything on my roof. I've not heard this noise no more on my living room roof since I hollered at it and told it to leave.
Wow.
I screamed and hollered and told it, and it would smack and stomp or whatever.
It was throwing a temper tantrum.
Finally, I just went off to my bedroom. I said enough of this, and I went off to my bedroom and just got close to a gun and laid down, and that was it for the night.
Yeah.
But,
well, interesting. Huh.
But yeah, we can go to the tractor. One night I was out goofing around. I have had pretty good luck with getting some weird responses back doing an owl call, but I don't. I'm really good at doing a lot of calls. I like to try to do calls by my mouth instead of like turkey calls or anything. I like to try to imitate it with my mouth. So I practice and goof around a lot, but I'm really good at an owl call. Well, I tried putting some different tones and stuff with it, try to get it, because I hear a lot of weird type owl calls that I think are coming from these creatures. So I try to imitate it back. Well, I was out one night just letting out some good owl calls, or just some calls, a lot of owl calls, and way off in the distance, across the road, in the directions where I was hunting and had my tree stand, had seen this one, I heard a call. It was, I got a call back. It was an owl call, but towards the end, it was a it was weird, really weird. Well, it would do this, and I was intrigued. I'm like, well, is this just a owl having a bad day, or? So I called back because I've called owls in several times. And if you're a good caller, it's not hard. Well, in the right time of the year, but I got another call back not too long after that. But usually an owl will come in on you pretty quick. It usually don't take them very long if they're interested. They'll come right in on you pretty quick. Well, I'd call back and it would reply and be closer. It would call. I kept doing this with it until it was close to the road. Well, this was at night, and like I told you, I have a spot. I have a little line of woods that come up from our property to the road, up a fence line, and a lot of deer cross it, coyotes, bear, you name it, they cross it, and I'll sit at night. There's a church on the other side of the road and adjacent, and they have a big night light. Well, I've watched deer walk up and jump the fence and cross the road. I've watched bear jump the fence and cross the road. And this is the night I had my sighting of one of these. Well, it got really close to the road, the last call I heard, and it just cut off. And we heard it good, and it was a really strange call. It almost sounded like an owl, but you could clearly tell that, it was imitating an owl somewhat, but it clearly did not come from an owl. Well, we was standing there, and I kept telling my wife I got hurt coming out on the porch, and I kept telling her, let's watch this road right here because it's coming right up. The last focal, it sounded like it was headed to this crossing, because there's very few spots up this stretch of road here that you could cross. There's good woods to road cover you could cross, and this is one of them. And all of a sudden, I see a dash. It's so fast you can't even make out what it is. It's coming across the road towards my side of the road. And I was like, did you see that? And my wife didn't see it, but it was so quick, if you would have blinked, you'd missed it. And well, we got to standing out there, and my wife was like, you need to cut this crap out. Let's just come on in, Well, I talked her into staying out. Well, we started hearing noises. The wood line we have a pond. The wood lines go right behind the pond. Well, we heard some noises coming out of there, and all of a sudden we got a loud pow, like a wood knock, like a pop, like, yeah, okay. Well, my wife was ready to head back in then. And I talked her into staying out once again, and I was like, come on, look, you want to hear this stuff, then sit here and listen. So we was standing there, and our dogs, I was trying to get them to shut up, but they was standing out there just raising Cain towards the pond, and I'd holler out and tell them to shut up, because we was trying to, we let them loose, we don't chain them up, but we wanted to hear this, and well, or try to get a glimpse. Well, we're sitting there, we have an old tractor sitting in the corner of our yard, and it is on our side of the fence. We have horses. We have about 7 horses, but there's nothing around this tractor. The closest tree to it, I think I was telling you, is about 30 yards, and it's a cherry tree. So if anything, nothing's going to fall on this tractor. There's nothing near it. And we were sitting there, and not too long after the wood knock, something just a dong right off that tractor. This tractor wasn't even 20 foot from us, and a rock. I mean, this is what it sounded like to me. I did not go and ever find the rock. The rock bounced off the tractor. Or that's what it sounded. It was a hard object, and it made a loud ding. And my wife just turned around and bolted in the house. And I stayed out, and I started getting a little creeped out, and so I worked my way back to the door, and I thought, I guess I'm just going to go on in, because it was just a little unnerving. And I went to walk into the door, and my dog barked and growled real good, and I turned around and looked, and I caught a glimpse of movement, and I looked over to where I'm always watching this part of the road, because when they cross, the light just gives a perfect outline, a perfect image. When I turned around, I seen this movement, and I watched one of these things step over the fence and then take about 3 good steps, and it was across that road. And I immediately hollered at my woman and had her come back out, but I got such a good visual of it. I mean, it was a good distance, a little over 100 yards away, but somebody would just have to, if you was here and seen it, you would understand. You cannot mistake a person to like I said, I've seen many animals before walk right up. I watched the buck one night. I could almost count every point on him,
Right.
That's why I watched it so good.
But so let's start from here. This thing basically steps over the fence, and is bipedal, and you clear, you saw it walking and what have you, and it was the same black, kind of tall and what have you. To step over a fence, you got to be pretty tall. How big of a fence was it? Like 3-4 strand or?
Yeah, this is it's a 4-strand fence. It comes up to my about my abdomen.
Okay.
And that's where I can't step over it. I can push it down and try to step over it, and my crotch would get all caught up in the barbed wire. So I would have to go in between the top and the,
So this thing basically walked and stepped over the fence.
I watched it step over, and it didn't have problem. It just stepped right over, and I've watched a deer, and it had to jump.
Right.
I've watched a bear, and it walked up on 4 legs, and then stood up on 2 legs. And that's the thing. It was at night, and I could tell it was a bear, and it jumped right over the fence, and then got back on 4 legs and walked across the road.
Right.
But this thing.
Well, you knew what it was, but the
on the
point,
bear, I could see the ears. The little ears on it. On this thing, it was standing straight up. The head was smacked almost right down on the shoulders.
Right.
You could, and like I mentioned in the one I seen at my house, it looked like the hair come down with the mane, almost like it all grew back towards the back of the head. I could see almost like that in this one too. It
Yeah,
looked like
yeah,
it had like a hairdo towards the back of its head.
yeah, that's
Very
interesting
tall.
right
Go
there.
ahead.
These things in your area seem to have a hairdo. It's almost like it's pushed back towards the crown of the head,
That's
and
what it seems like, yeah.
yeah, and then they almost like they have a mane that comes down their back. And does this mane like come down to like a point, like toward their waist?
I'm gonna be the only one that I've seen the whole body. You know, the one I watched cross the road, I've seen a lot of it from the butt up because there is some shrubs along that fence.
Okay.
I could mostly see down the back, but from what I could see, it looked like it grew down towards the shoulders, and then at the shoulders, it kind of flattened out.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it almost comes down to a point to where your shoulder blades are supposed to be, and then it would flatten out.
All right. But, okay, let's go back to the rock. This thing threw a rock how far?
Over 100 yards. Sometimes I set up a target to sight in my deer hunting rifle. I set it up at 100 yards, and it's right at the pond, so it's about 140 yards to the wood line. At least that thing chunked a rock at least 130 yards.
That's incredible.
If it's the same one that I was thinking that cracked the tree, you know, the same one that made the tree knock sound, if that was the same one that threw it, it had the sound of the tree knock was at least 130 yards from the tractor.
Yeah. And you know, I've heard of another case where the guy was having stuff thrown at him. He said, and he hollered out at it, you know, why don't you just hit me with it? And anyway, this thing threw a rock from where it was, and it was at least 100 plus yards away, throws it over the tall trees and where it would come down in between the trees. So it threw it 100 yards with an arch to go over the trees and come down between trees, and it hit him for real with a small a small rock. It didn't like hurt him bad or anything, but he asked it, why don't you just go ahead and hit me? And all of a sudden, boom, he was hit. And it was coming from an area where he ended up kind of figuring it out. There was certain places they would sit, and there was wallered out grass areas and you know, and little markers and things where they would be on watch, kind of like you've experienced. But anyway, you had we're going to have to wrap it up really quick because we're getting to the time limit on what a show is going to be able to upload.
Let's finish up with that then, because this goes on for another 2 more days.
Yeah. Okay.
And
well,
I got some more stories I can go on with that after that if you want, if we have time. But
yeah. All right. Well, we'll do that then. You'll come back because there's some other stuff that I want to talk about that is kind of going to help kind of pull all of this subject together, and because I want people to know that a lot of times you've had encounters that you just, when you think back on it, you realize, hey, there was something going on. And that's happened to me too when I think back. And maybe I'll even bring out a video that I had made when I was fishing. There was a few little things in that video where I'd mentioned where I actually had an encounter, and I told you about it a little bit about it. But we'll get deeper into that one on the next episode when you come back, and you can come back in a day or so, and we'll kind of go over all that kind of stuff. So you just hold on the line there for a second, Brandon, and thank you for coming and sharing today and telling all this. It's really a fascinating thing, and I hope the audience enjoys it. So all you out there in YouTube land, thank you for watching. God bless, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.